Games, board games, board games. It's what I'm talking about. Board games and Adam Best. It's what I'm not gonna shout. I am starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing, and today we're going to get to know a rather lovely fellow who's made some giant games and done some work for charity. At Aircon, there was a game with Adam and me. We played a giant game of Hey That's My Fish, and it was rather fun. I cannot even remember who won, although it was probably Adam, I think, although I'm not sure. Board games and Adam Best is what we're talking about. Board games and Adam Best, I'm not gonna shout. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It's at 10 a.m. UK time for Bessie Beats and Board Game Bladder. And today we are meeting Adam Best. We're talking about the early life, passions, gaming history. We're going to have a gentle chat, just get to know each other, and then hopefully we'll have you back on in a few weeks. How are you today, Adam?
I'm very good, thank you.
And hello, Rob. It is lovely to see you. So, for those who don't know, Adam has been around on at least around Aircon, showing off giant Suro, by which I mean made of linoleum tiles. So you, as your body, you are one of the playing pieces. There was a giant, Hey, That's My Fish, where again you are one penguin and there were some slight rules modifications, so you're wandering around, and I really liked that one. I was actually surprised how nice a game it was, even with essentially just one fish, if you know what I mean. Wandering around, trying to get your bits. And I think that, but I wanted to just get to know who you are, because we've not had a proper chinwag at any of these events, have we?
No, we've crossed paths a few times. I've met you outside and helped you carry stuff into the convention, and but we're normally both so busy. We're both effectively working at the convention, even though with the giant games, I try not to man them the whole time because I want to take part. But you know what it's like. You end up networking and working and don't actually get time to do some of the nice stuff. So no, we haven't had a proper conversation, I don't think.
And so let's start off by talking about what we normally get up to on any given day. Let's talk about some recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So Adam, in the past week, what have been some of your highlights? What are you working on right now? What are you enjoying, and what games have you played, if any?
I haven't played many games. I'm getting ready for our big charity convention in 6 weeks. But what that does mean, most days I'm getting a big box of games come through the door, and I'm looking and going, wow, I want to play that one. I want to own that one. Or in some cases, I've never heard of them. So I've been mostly kind of opening in and looking at stuff we've had donated. The most weird thing we've had donated from an individual is Drop Mix, which is like a music mixing game. I think it's Hasbro. And I can't decide whether to put it as a raffle prize because it's weird, or keep it in our lending library because it's weird. Or so yeah, I think that's the kind of the game I played the most in April, weirdly.
That is a really cool one, and there's a lot of fun and joy to be had as a toy just mixing these things together. I got one when it was seriously discounted. I think that they must have overproduced and misjudged the audience, I guess, because I think it started off at like hundreds of pounds for all the cards and everything. And I got all like loads of cards plus the basic unit for less than 30 quid.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so it's definitely brought lots of joy into the life. I would say one thing about it being in a lending library is people might struggle to get their phone connected. People might struggle with the tech. I don't know. It's up to you.
I am worried about that, but I think I might put it in the library first because it is very unusual. I like having odd games. Then it could be that we review it in a year's time. If it hasn't been borrowed, we can then sort of move it on, as long as it stays for a good cause. It was donated by an individual, in fact. So about 60% of the library. For those who don't know, we have a free lending library, which is at 320 games now. and I think it's probably the 5th or 6th biggest collection in Herefordshire. But 60% of that has come from individuals. So rather than selling them secondhand on Facebook or eBay, we get given games, and it's incredible. And it's a lot of fun to look at what's in those packages.
And that's a really lovely thing that you do, and I guess even though it's second-hand, you can still, there are still really good games. And I like this idea of normalizing second-hand games as prizes, because they're still valuable, they're still going to bring joy around. And I do understand the joy of opening something in shrink and having everything pristine and being able to sort through the cards knowing no one else has touched it ever. But I think that is a sort of fetish that as a society we would be behooved to move away from, just for the sake of the environment, possibly.
Completely agree. When I'm not buying a brand new game, I often look at the ding and dent section, and I'm very happy. And there's a big section of the library which are really badly damaged. There's a nice publisher who sends me damaged games to put in the library, and some of them have got a hole right the way through the bottom of the box. But that's fine. The contents are still good. And you're right, we shouldn't be obsessed about keeping things new and shiny. It's not a collection, it's a library. It's there to be played.
100%. Hello, Timmy. It is lovely to see you. We're still talking about recent highlights. What have you been up to? I will show you what I've been up to. I have been doing a fair bit. Well, yesterday was all about my game Seize the Power. Have you heard of this, Adam?
I haven't. Is that to do with the question you asked on Twitter yesterday?
Yes. So this is a game in very late stages. So here you can see 3 of my friends who all agreed to playtest the game. It's all about discrimination and subjugation of power and negotiation. So there are some characters who have more eyes, eye stalks, more arms, and the rules are applied to everyone. But some of the rules are inherently discriminatory. For example, on your turn, you get 1 money for every eye that you have. Or on your turn, you get 1 money for every pair of arms that you have. Or anyone who's got 5 or more eyes can get a free money reduction when they undergo training. And all this sorts of stuff that shows the inherent privilege in society. And so here you can see this is a complete redesign. We did have it at a fairly stable state at 2020. I was going to take it to Festival. It got signed up by Inside the Box. I'm super excited for it to be a big release. It's meant to go on Kickstarter in summer 2023. We've got until the end of this summer to sort it. But what I'm focusing on is getting it ready for a festival this weekend. In this festival, people aren't going to want to play a 2-hour game, which is what it was. And so I started folk early. I cut out one of the resources. I simplified the rules. I did this and that and the other to try and hopefully streamline it. And I was really excited because even though, yes, I was one of the players, I would have ideally liked to have 4 players and me just observing. It seemed to be solidly playable within 1 hour. Our second game did run 70 minutes, but that was with there was about 20 minutes of extra chats and pie eating in the middle of that. So really 50 minutes. And so I'm really happy about that. And yeah, on your turn, you do some training, you get a job. I decided in the end to go with the word employability. So employability determines how much training you've got, but also potentially, hey, if you've got extra arms, like you can see that card there, if you've got 6 or more arms, you get bonus employability. If you've got a nice house, well, then you might get bonus employability, because that feels like a reflection of the real world somewhat. And it's kind of meant to highlight that even positive discrimination is inherently problematic. And even though everyone's starting off with the same resources, the only differences that they have is these facial differences, these bodily differences, and even though it might be a bit heavy-handed, well, I thought it was heavy-handed, but one of the players said, oh, I didn't really think about that during the game because I was so focused on trying to win and everything. But now I think about it in retrospect, I can understand that poor Finnemore basically gets no love. And so I was really happy about that. A quick hello to Alex. Lovely to see you. Yes, there was pie eating in the middle, actual pie eating, because we took a break. One of my guests made pie. And so, yeah. Anything that you want to say about games about discrimination, serious games?
I think that's a really good concept because it gets you talking, but by making it abstract and almost silly. But at the same time, it's absolutely not silly. There is discrimination of all factors in the world, and most of them are things that you have absolutely no control over. So I definitely want when you get a playable copy, we'll definitely give that a playtest if it's kind of thing you can sort of post or send or print out.
I know that Inside the Box are running some digital playtests. I do not myself engage with digital playtests. I've decided that that's for a multitude of essentially mental health reasons. It's just not something I'm able to find the energy to do. But if anyone out there does do digital playtests, then please get in touch with me and I can put you in touch with Rose, who would be delighted to have you for some of them. Alex asks, do you get bonus employability if you know the right people? I see what you're getting at. And not everything is represented directly in the game. But having said that, the rules where you get bonus employability, you need to negotiate with those people. So they might say, well, so all the rules, for example, this one, which says if you've got 4 or more arms, you've got to pay free money less for your house deposit. And that rule only works if the person who's holding that rule decides to enforce it. So obviously they're going to enforce it for themselves, but then if it's someone else, you might say, well, I tell you what, I'll give you a 2 money reduction, but then the 3rd money you give to me. How about that? And then you're probably going to say, well, I guess that makes sense. They get 1 money, I get 2 money. Okay. And it's about being able to do those deals with other people. And if you're cut out of those deals, then there's no way you're going to win the game. And honestly, Finnemore is probably not going to win the game anyway. That's the sad truth of it. But let's move on to brilliant thing. What's a little thing which is brilliant? Adam, I hear you like making Giants games. I mean, I've not actually heard that. I've just seen it. And I've read it, like from you restating the facts that I already knew. But what's brilliant about Giant games?
I think the main thing is just the sheer joy they bring. So when I set up with Zero and I sit there and just kind of watching it as people walking by, because for aircon, we're set up right by the front door, by the ticket area, so people can see us. And you just see grown adults just looking at that going, that's Zero, which I'm probably mispronouncing. I can be the peace, and you just see the smile that spreads across their face, and then they're actually able to interact with it, and it's just the pleasure it brings. For us, obviously, selfishly, it brings us awareness of what we do. It helps people know about Herefordshire Boardgamers, so when I ask for prizes and support, we're not unknown. And it's got to the point, which is wonderful, that when anyone posts, not quite anyone, but when people on Facebook post about Giant Games, someone will normally tag us as like the people who make Giant Games. What isn't brilliant is the first edition of Zero was made out of carpet tiles, and it weighed 6.5 stone. So it's why we raffled it off for charity, and then we remade it with lino.
So like I like to keep this bit about the brilliance. So like the rhino is the brilliance bit.
Yes. Halving the weight is definitely brilliant. Yes.
Do you transport all of these things in your car? How, like, do you have a small truck? Do you have a big car? How do you get everything around?
We just actually swapped vehicles recently to have slightly bigger load space. It's still not a big vehicle, but yeah, we just take it up. What was really nice with aircon, this was a brilliant thing. I said that just on the aircon community, Facebook community, we're having a holiday before, because that's what we do. Aircon is my holiday of the year. It's on my birthday. So we had a holiday before and saw the red squirrels, and then we wanted to go up to Scotland afterwards. Like, can someone look after our stuff for us? We don't want to carry it around and use petrol on it. And I had 3 or 4 offers within a couple of hours of people who would look after a random stranger's box of board games for us. I was like, that's really nice. And in the end, we did take someone up on the offer, and they did offer us to cook us a meal and stay at their house on the way back down the country.
That is just lovely, that sense of connection and getting to know people. And I guess that's what Herefordshire board gaming is all about, just the social connections.
Community.
And yes, bonus brilliance is brilliance. And Rob says, I got into a bit of argument about Zero on Twitter this week. Someone arguing that it's not good because it's chaotic and you have little control. But Rob reckons it's good for the same reasons. Giant Zero sounds great. Yeah, 100%. It's all about, if it were to say, Zero, the most strategic game in the world, well then, that would be terrible, right? Because it would be false advertising. But if it's like, hey, Zero, an easy to learn game that you get to move dragons around and you get to do that, what's not to love? I mean, you need to know what you're getting into, for goodness sake.
The giant games are actually a lot harder because you are on the board and your view is constrained. So I see people standing there spinning in a circle trying to plot a route out, whereas with the normal board you can actually see everything, and you're trying to like lean past people, and you get to a point where there's maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe not 3 but 2 people on the same half-meter square tile. It's so much harder.
I definitely found this. I think have I actually played Zero? I think I had. I don't think I got to proper play of it, like with loads of people around. I think I might have gone around myself, but I managed to play Hey That's My Fish against you, which was really fun. I definitely find that the new vantage points, embodying yourself within the piece, having this literal point of view, a completely new point of view. And yes, it is a great twist. That's what I'm going to say is brilliant about them, and they're just a big spectacle. They're just fun, whether it's big versions of normal-sized things or tiny versions. I think that massive upscaling or massive downscaling is just brilliant. And hello, Panic. It is lovely to see you. It must be ridiculously early over there. Panic Games is from America, but I hope that you're generally well. And yeah.
What's most amazing, our other game we have is Terra Meeple City. And we have had to change the rules quite heavily because it's just so different. But you end up with 6-foot-tall buildings. And we had some people with quite severe learning difficulties to be able to completely play the game. They didn't follow any of the proper rules, but they could take their turn. They had a beach ball and they were throwing at a building bigger than them, which came crashing down. And there is no way that those individuals could have played a full board game, but they took full part in it, and it was amazing to see. The same as very young people were able to play a game and be equally involved. So that's really nice. So the others aren't more accessible, I don't think, but Terra Meeple City is definitely more accessible. Because it's life size, because you can walk amongst the pieces. You don't need fine dexterity.
And yeah, it's just lovely seeing this photo of people at the most recent Aircon 2022. How many weeks ago was that? Like 4 weeks, I want to say?
3 weeks.
3 weeks, thank you.
11th of March, I know that for some random reason.
Sorry I wasn't able to make the birthday celebrations. I was a bit tired and preoccupied with all the convention stuff, but
yeah,
I hope you had a good evening dinner.
We played Ark Nova on the Geek and Sun table, so I think that was a double win, I would say, because that was the game of the convention, I would say.
And this is a bit of Terra Meeple City, where you can see there's even a bit of sponsorship and a lovely sticker with my name on it, which I'm very honoured by.
Yeah, the grey class are old folks, so that's not representation of you. That's a generic, stereotypical old person.
Yeah, if it was a representation of me, there should be definitely a bit more red in there, I guess.
When we remake it, it will be.
And yeah, there you can see the Terra Meeple City. You know what? Do you want to talk a wee bit about this? Because yeah, we've started talking about it. Explain what exactly goes on, and when do these caution things come down, or are they just up there for the entire convention?
So that's just a bit of an arena space, just to separate it off so people don't kind of walk into the range. Yes, what you can see on the right is 3 or 4 buildings set up. The middle one is normally Hereford Cathedral, and we kind of put our sponsors onto it. So that year we were sponsored by the local cinema. So that's where you can see the little red lines. I think it might be cinema seating. So again, just
nice.
way of saying thank you to different sponsors. So that's Terra Maple City. And so we make them just so, one, people know about us, and we also want to get like non-gamers to come and try gaming, because as we all know, there's so many stereotypes about what gaming is and isn't and who does it. I'm hoping by having some life-size ones and some intriguing photographs, people will go, we'll try that, we'll come, take a risk, try something new. And because we raise money for Mind, that's another great thing to knock down people's barriers, because if they fundraise for Mind, they must be nice people. So it's I love sharing the hobby, and that's what you're looking at is 2020, our last one-day convention that we ran. We raised £2,200 in a day, and bear in mind Herefordshire is very, very small and surprisingly poor. And yeah, it's the last time we ran a big convention, and what I'm planning right now is to come back in 6 weeks' time, and we're going to do a 3-day convention, and I hope it will be really good fun.
I'm sure it will. And yeah, we can see that you seem to have put on a great event. So, you know what? This seems like a reasonable place to pause for 1 minute. Can you explain what's going on and what you would plan differently? Or, yeah, so at the bottom, is that a raffle? Is that a lending library?
Bring a buy table at the center of the screen. On the left, you've got our library. So we've actually brought some IKEA shelves, which I have. So those will have shelving, which is slightly better. We're very proud of our big library. In the middle, the double table, which is brown, is a painting zone, and that was really popular. So we gave away some free minis, and it was just a really nice, tranquil space where people just sat and painted minis under some expert tuition of some of our regulars who that's what they do. They aren't, I wouldn't call them board gamers. They're very much mini painters, but they're still part of the community.
That is amazing. And yeah, congratulations on the amount that you've raised. As Alex says, that is awesome. So let's get to the questionably quick questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation. It's just the questionably quick questions section. So just the first answer that comes to your mind, okay? Are you ready?
Yep.
Podcasts or books?
Books.
Meeples or figurines?
Figurines.
Magazines or internet?
Internet.
Giant or tiny miniature?
Gotta be giant. I'm biased.
Obviously. And what's the last 3 games you played?
Last 3 games, Drop Mix, which I mentioned already, Meadow, which I think is brilliant. I love nature games, and Rolling Realms.
The kind of mixing all Stegmeyer's previous games together and into a roll and write format. That's an interesting one. What's some of your favorite games right now?
I love 2 kinds of games. I love the heavy, mean, thematic ones like Nemesis, Battlestar Galactica, Twilight Imperium. And then I also love games like So Clover and Telestrations because they're so incredibly accessible. They're a great way for people just to socialize, even introverts like me. You can have a nice conversation with a framework.
So you're not a super big fan of 2-player abstracts or things in the middle so much?
No, I tend not to play abstracts as much. I don't tend not to play Euros as much, but I like the hybrid games which are a little bit messy, like Great Wall I played recently, which I would call a kind of hybrid, a little bit Euro, a little bit kind of fighty. But yeah, abstracts are the ones I play the least, I think. I like a bit of story.
From the audience, Alex asks, what would be your dream game to embiggen?
I love the word embiggen, we use that. I really want to do deep sea adventure. I think it would capture everything because you would be carried. We've asked and we've got partial permission. Oink Games protects their branding very heavily, and I completely agree because it's gorgeous. And they said potentially yes if you can make it to a good standard. So we're we're remaking Hey That's My Fish. We've remade Zero to try and get to a point they look good. And go, look, we can make good stuff. Please, can we make it? The reason being, you're stood holding your treasure a long way from the door. There will be like a 3-foot oxygen marker, like valve, ticking down, and you will feel the pressure. Like, I'm a long way from that submarine. I'm not going to make it. And I think we can make it look really pretty with like scaffolding pipes to make like a proper metal door and all sorts of stuff.
So would that be one that stays in Herefordshire that you can't actually bring to Aircon?
I think we could move it because I think we can disassemble the door. The valve would have would be take apartable. I think we could. And I think it would capture the feeling of being live really well because you would really feel the pressure.
Alex says it sounds a bit like Kabaddi. I don't know if you know this game where you need to say Kabaddi, 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 Kabaddi to show that you're not breathing. So bringing that real thing. Alex also asks, have you ever seen a hurricane?
I haven't. No, I haven't seen much bad weather, really. I've seen a few good lightning storms.
Well, that's good. Would you rather have a meeple-sized house or a house-sized meeple?
The second, I'd have a house-sized meeple. I would probably carve it out and do something weird with it.
Where would you put it? Like, do you have the land for it? That's what I want to know.
Depends how big a house, I guess. I'd probably need planning permission, but I would try.
So maybe you could ask the council to make some sort of installation in the local park.
Yeah, and you could open up the legs and have like a free access board game library. And maybe the other leg could be like an open community gaming space. I'm up for this.
Alex says that apparently in Hereford, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happen.
That is true. We have occasional earthquakes, but that's it.
Really?
I think a couple of years ago we had there was an earthquake in Birmingham like 3 or 4 years ago, and we just it woke me up. But yeah, it's super occasional.
I was not aware of that. I did not realize that any part of the UK was on a fault line.
It doesn't. I don't know how it happened, but occasionally the UK gets earthquakes.
Okay. Next question is game shows. Do you like any game shows, like TV game shows? Yeah.
I don't watch very much TV, but I do like sort of the puzzles, the interactive ones. So I like seeing them and then working out whether I can do something better or kind of use it for a community event, like borrow some of the elements. But actually, as for watching live TV, I almost watch none.
What do you think about sports and athletics? Are you an active person?
I'm not. I am quite dyspraxic. I'm also dyslexic, but it means I'm very clumsy and it takes me a lot of energy to walk and talk and not shuffle. So I'm not a naturally sporting person at all. I feel anyone who has a hobby or a passion, go and embrace it and take part. So if you like sports your thing, then great. But for me, I'd rather sit and play a game.
That is totally fair. And I want to remind everyone, today's just a social chat. It is going to be breaking earlier than usual. Feel free to comment, ask questions from like, follow. And at this point, I'd like to ask you about your first memory involving a game and your first memory, if you're willing to share, full stop.
I don't remember very much of my childhood at all. I have a very good memory, but I think it's good because I don't know if I defrag my memory like an old-fashioned computer or I just archive stuff off, but I remember the first board game I remember playing was called Market Day, a basic roll and write where you had to collect different kinds of animals and they were like a jigsaw puzzle which slotted onto your board. That's the first proper game I remember, but we always had loads of board games in the house, sort of Escape from Atlantis and Solar Quest, Mysteries of Peking, all those sort of ones.
So these are some good games. I mean, especially Escape from Atlantis, and then which was somewhat recently brought back. Yeah. And then, so presumably this was a joyous time and you had a happy childhood, spending lovely moments with your family?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't perfect. We grew up, I would say, fairly poor. So there was always an element of... I don't really necessarily know it at the time, but where your friends would have holidays and so forth, we didn't as much. But it was a good. We had our own garden full of fresh vegetables. We had games in the cupboard, so I was happy.
Mm-mm. And that's a really interesting thing, the notion of trying to make do within your means. And there's something lovely about the amount of fun that you can have with even a,
Stick.
second-hand box that you got for £2 for the charity shop. That can last 2 years potentially.
Yeah.
But as you say, like the physical stuff, like a stick, or I was actually thinking a deck of playing cards, more practically, where I invented a couple of games for that. But what? How would you say your relationship with board games evolved? At what point did you think, hey, I want to run a board games club? I want to spread the word of board games.
I think so. I've always done board games. I dabbled a little bit. I had periods where I focused entirely on work and kind of get my career started, and then I've kind of then played a little bit board games. About 2010, I made a serious effort to kind of recruit my colleagues to come and play with me. And luckily, I had a fairly big IT department, so I kind of ended up with a 6 to 8 person games night around my house weekly. And in about 2015, I was like, this is really good. I think I want to share this. So we saw an advert for the NSPCC to do a board game day. So we ran one of those in 2015, one of those in 2016. And I started with a bit of Facebook and just seeing what other gamers were out there, and sort of discovered there were a few clubs out there, but a lot of them aren't very good at advertising. And then after the second one, people said, can we do this more often? So I went, sure. So that's how HB sort of started. It was after the second charity event. We just started meeting monthly, and then we went from monthly to twice monthly, and it kind of carried on like that. And it's, for me, it's about sharing the hobby, providing a free social event. And for that is, as I've mentioned, for me being not much wealth when I grew up, not much access to resources. I want our events to be free because that's a barrier, that's an inclusion factor. And then COVID happened, and then the club kind of exploded. That might be a conversation for another time.
Yeah, how to migrate to an online format. And I know that if people check out the full descriptions that were running a minute ago, you did a lot of work getting online quizzes and all sorts of things going, and you're still maintaining that even though we can now physically play again. You're trying to maintain those online friendships and connections.
Yeah, we've got some really good friends in Sweden who joined us because we're doing online RPGs. And it's like, well, if we go back to in person and cut off all the online stuff, you're kind of losing those friends you built online. And we've got someone, I don't quite know where they're from. They're from up north. They bumped into us at Aircon. But I've never met them before. But there's someone else who joined us for online games during the pandemic. So yeah, so we're going to stay online in some guise.
That's lovely. And I understand you have to cut back at some points. Like I used to do, I want to say 10 streams a week. And obviously, like that was back when I couldn't see people at all. But even now, I think for me, if I'm allowing myself to sometimes do super short things, and sometimes if it's just me, it will be literally 10 minutes if needs be. But online relationships are as real as physical relationships, because even though you might not have seen their moving face or whatever, there is a person on the other side of the screen, of course.
Absolutely.
So you've got a library, you mentioned 320 games. How do you decide which games to get for the library? And a question from the audience, have you bought a game just based on nostalgia? Hello, Jeff Ross.
I haven't. Luckily that I've still got a lot of the old ones, and we get donated quite a lot of nostalgic games as well. So we've just got a section of the library for like 1980s games, including Colditz with that symbol that you can't use anymore, which I'm debating whether to put a sticker on. But yeah, they are a sign of the times. So how do we decide? So a lot of the stuff we've got donated, so we don't have much decision. But when it comes to, we have had some grants to buy some games, and it was a good mix of what is really easy, what's accessible, A little lean towards who's sponsored us and who's been nice to us, because I want to make sure they get some money. So that is always in the back of my mind. And then one or two sort of more expensive statement items that new players may not have. And for those two, we decided Wingspan and Blood Rage. So they're probably our most expensive games at about £50 each. Because we wanted a fighty game, because that's quite hard to do well. And I think Blood Rage does it well. And Wingspan is a good step up in the realms of, it's a Euro game with a theme which is more complicated, still beginner friendly, but it's a step up in the from sort of party and light social games, and step up from the classic games.
And for sure, anyone who's a birder and just thinks, oh, I like birds, I've never played a game before, but hey, I'm going to try Wingspan. It might be a bit much for you as a first game if you've never really played a game before. And I have heard stories of people going in purely just because of the number of illustrations and then being a little bit disappointed that they couldn't wrap their head around it. But clearly there was a demand, and like Hargrave herself, started off saying, I like complex games. There are games about birds, but there's nothing about birds that is this level of complexity. So what it really feels like is that at this point, maybe more shopkeepers will be aware that there are people that they can reach out to and have some of these lighter games about all these other subjects.
If I was given the choice between play a game that's slightly too heavy but is a theme that the new player absolutely loves, and a game which is slightly too easy but doesn't have a theme, I would go for the theme every time, whether that's Star Wars or birds or Marvel.
But that's with you there to guide them. Because if you're not there, if they're learning from the manual, then there's a greater danger of them just being too overwhelmed and they just can't, and they just give up.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. I hear that quite frequently, and I think adults definitely do have a barrier to learning, a fear of looking foolish, and it's something that we try and help by. We've got a few guides on the website to try and help people, and a guide on how to teach games or how to learn games. But I definitely do think, there is definitely a fear of learning rule books, and if you open a rule book and it's more than 3 pages, I can see people's reactions are like, how do we even begin? Yeah, we're very aware of that.
Was interesting yesterday because I managed to simplify. So Seize the Power, this is kind of a reference sheet, but it's also kind of all the rules. And so, it tells you everything. But then the interesting from one of the players was saying, I don't just want to know what I can do. I need to know why I want to do these things. I want to know that this resource is for this thing, that the revolutions are so that if I don't have any rules or money, that there's a chance for me to come back. I want to know these things. And whereas I think that people who've played loads and loads of games, they are a bit happier maybe stumbling through and learning as they go. I don't know if you found out as well.
Yeah, I think I am. Especially with more complicated games, I got a quick example. Clash of Cultures is it's fairly heavy. It's a civilization game, and there are 3 different resources in it. I downloaded a crib sheet which basically says resource A is culture. You can earn it using the following 6 ways. You can spend it to the following 7 things. Then you've got mood. Here are 5 ways you can earn it, including stuff that comes off a tech tree, so you have to kind of unlock. But I do like. It's tough. You don't want to over-explain stuff because you want to leave some element of discovery for the player. But equally, if you could clearly say this resource does X and you get it by Y, it helps let's set out a strategy. Whether that's like a back of a player aid, you can just tuck away.
And kind of also saying, giving people something of a guide. And I think it's really interesting also looking at routes. But this sort of onboarding is something that I would love to have a discussion about on another day, maybe. I would like to ask you before we start wrapping up, what are some of your other passions? Because you've done a lot of great work with embiggening board games and making money for charity and bringing people and communities together. But what are some of your other passions, if you have anything you'd like to give a shout out to?
Nature photography. It's a chance to go for a walk with a purpose. There's an element of technical stuff because unlike people photography, you can't ask a bird to stop and turn or change the spotlight or whatever. So there is a lot of technical to it. It's also kind of punishing. You will miss more shots than you take, and it's quite a good life lesson to just enjoy the day. And if you happen to get a good photograph, then well done. But actually, yeah, kind of think nature photography is a lesson in disappointment in some ways, which sounds really horrible, but it's good. It means you don't always get to what you want, and you have to remember to enjoy the things that you can do. It just
But if
you
you
saw the
try
bird.
sometimes, you get what you need.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think nature photography is my biggest thing. I'm lucky to have a big garden, so I just love standing at my window, especially I'm on work calls or team calls, and I'll look out my window and to see the birds at the feeder.
And that is just delightful. And hello, Runa, who is a lovely person who does lots of crafts. Let me actually, or if someone else could do a shout out to Runa. And yeah, we're just meeting Adam, who is getting to the end of our conversation. You've done, thank you for that, Alex. Lots of, you were last up to no game. Oh, that's the wrong Runa. There we go. Runa Eleanor. They were last up to some makers and crafting. Yes. There we go. And Adam, you're bringing people together. You are focusing on people around you. But if you want people to know anything more about yourself, you are an introvert. You mentioned dyspraxia and dyslexia, both of them.
Yep.
And you've mentioned things about mental health. Is there anything that you would like to share about yourself at this point?
It's just funny that I'm the face of HB. I'm an introvert. I do all the social media, and I'm dyslexic. So I'm actually really badly suited for what I do and what I love doing. But I muddle through. But it makes me empathetic. It makes me want to support more people. I just want to thank you for. I'm probably the first person on the stream to not have a camera. Being photographed, being on camera.
You're the second, I think.
Oh, that's not too bad then. But it's an interesting one. People, when you say to people, I don't appear on camera, if you go, fair enough, that's cool. But I was on a call with a salesperson, and they kind of asked me 3 times to have my camera on, and I almost sort of went, you don't get mental health, you don't get inclusion. I almost don't want to buy your product now, and I almost sort of ended the call. Yes, it is nice to have the human connection to see people's faces, but equally, people's comforts are more important. So yeah, it's a weird fact about me. I've only appeared on web camera for about 6 seconds. I was a fancy dress remote event. I had a costume on, I turned the camera on, I waved, I turned the camera off. So I managed to never use a web camera during COVID. And I've also been working from home for about 8 years. So I've still never used a webcam.
You've done a lot of speaking at your events, and presumably there's always voice chats going on?
Yeah, voice chats I'm fine with. Still very nervous about being on live, like radio or Twitch, and I'm okay at presenting in person. I just have to put on my mask and pretend I'm a big boy.
I have to be honest. I would like to be able to empathize more, but I struggle to, because it's so out of my worldview, if you know what I mean. Because for me, I don't know. I think there was a switch at some point where I do have this desire to be part of the center of attention. And thank you, past self, for reminding us to stretch and take care of our posture and everything. But as you know, at this point, I'm very comfortable with it. But for the first maybe 100 times, there was a bit of nervousness. There was what am I going to say at this point? This is episode 592, and that's just the morning shows. That I've done other shows in the evening. Alex says Bez is probably the most extroverted person I know. Runa says, I started streaming without a face cam. My depression was bad enough that I couldn't look at myself, and I even removed my mirror from my bathroom. Mental health can be annoying. Also, in a world where everyone expects stuff, people are expecting selfies, people are expecting your camera to be on, and maybe you don't want to share. But, like Runa, you share, like, I have to admit, like, I don't spend that much time watching other people's Twitch, ironically, these days. But I love seeing your stuff on Instagram, and that's a lovely way of sharing. And of course, you're all able to share something with the world. But is there anything that Adam or anyone who's feeling like they're introverted in the chat that people like myself could do to make it potentially easier for you, if you know what I mean?
Just be empathetic in the same way that we have to be empathetic. But what I found really nice is years ago, I started a new job, and it was the company retreat where everyone got together in a hotel. And it was like my third day of employment. It just happened to happen that way.
Nice.
And did a thing called an extrovert adopting introverts.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, so I had someone who worked for the company a while, saw me struggling, and basically adopted me and invited me into their friends group for pretty much their whole weekend. And it was just a really nice thing to have someone take a little bit of time to spend on you. So it's a balancing act. You don't want to force yourself or like take over someone's introversion, and you need to give them time to recharge. But sometimes being that guardian, being that bridge, being the person who introduces or starts conversations is a really valuable thing that an extrovert can do to help an introvert. You can misfire, but in principle it's really good. And it's that person. I was dreading the weekend, like meeting hundreds of strangers away from home and all that kind of stuff, but this person made it a really nice time, and I still feel like I owe that person a big favor.
I mean, I'm sure that they, enjoyed getting to know you if they already knew everyone else. And Runa says, yes, that is what helps, extroverting, adopting introverts, but in a gentle way.
Yeah, that's well phrased.
And lots of love to you, Runa. Jeff Ross says, I volunteer at TerraCon because it helps me socialise. That's interesting. I totally get that, because the first time I was at UK Games Expo, there was a bit of, yes, the volunteering does make it more financially accessible, if you know what I mean. Back in those days, they still give you room and board, essentially. But back in those days, it was kind of cash, whereas now they do vouchers for the food. So I think the first time I went, I was kind of, super budgeting for the food. And that meant that I was able to use a bit of the money towards the travel costs, which meant that it still spent a tiny bit of money, but I had time to enjoy myself. But then the other thing was that you get the sense of belonging. You get the sense of, this is what I'm doing, and some of my schedule has been spoken for. And even as an extrovert, sometimes I like that. I don't know if you find it also helps if you know, okay, during these times we're going to do this, during this time we're going to do this, having previous knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, I like structure. My wife particularly likes having lists and structure and knowing what to do when. I'm a lot more relaxed, and I prepare well and then just wing it. I don't volunteer as such, but I have the giant games. I have the HB logo. I have
you have your role to play.
That's my role. That's my mask. That's my mission, and that's how I cope with social experiences.
That is. Thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate that. Alex wants to bring up VTubers. That I've heard of this. Have you heard of this, Adam?
Oh, I have seen that. Yeah, I think that would still, if it's one of those where the camera gives you a alternate face, I think that would still stress me out, because I wouldn't know it was still me. But I might look into that.
I mean, here you've got a photo of you, and your photo is appearing, but I guess you don't have the stress of, oh, what if I do something wrong for this second, or is that am I kind of tapping into the schemas that go?
I don't even have a photograph on my Facebook page. I put it on for May for the charity event, so members of the public can see me, and then as soon as May's over, I'll put a picture of one of my animal photographs will be back on. I don't even have photos of me online, so that's how bad I don't know what it is, whether it's social anxiety, whether it's self-esteem. I don't know what the label is, but yeah, it's beyond just cameras. It is a me thing.
Runa wants to make it clear that it's not just an alternate face, it is like an alternate person. For example, someone made herself into a jellyfish, and the jellyfish might have a cute little kawaii face, but the jellyfish is just kind of moving around.
And if it lip syncs, I'll look into that. It might be cool. Thank you.
And I've seen someone doing stuff on it might be Animal Crossing, one of the Animal Crossings, and then they invite someone in and then they kind of just stand. And Rob says, I always use my avatars to make sure everyone knows what I look like. No, you don't, Rob. I mean, Rob has 2 eyes. That's about all he can tell from this avatar. I guess Rob's being sarcastic. I don't know. But yeah, I feel like if you are such a mug, if we can wrap up. And so this has gone a little bit longer than expected. It's been so delightful. I could chat to you for hours, but I'm sure you have things to do. But also, I want to get going to day 4 of the Now Play This Design Camp, where I'm going to carry on working with stuff. But let's go to the question of the day. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way. I'm going to ask everyone, like, remembering it's a continuum, not a binary, where would you place yourself on the extraversion to introversion scale? And I'll be interested to hear a little bit about that, where you feel you fall. I mean, I am pretty extroverted. I would like people to be around a lot of the time. I'd be happy to have people around, all the time. But, sometimes I want to be selfish. Sometimes I want to be, naked when I'm showering and, when I'm on the loo or whatever. It would take very specific people to make sure that I'm comfortable with them at that level. But yeah, beyond that, I'm like, basically, and obviously sometimes I really want to blast my music, but except for those, if people are okay with, and sometimes I'm going to be honest, I don't want people to always be asking me questions. Sometimes I don't have the energy to always answer, but someone's presence for me is almost always appreciated, especially when it's someone who's like, you know what, it's okay that your entire place of dwelling is super messy. It's okay that you've got loads of boxes. And like, as long as there's that acceptance, do you know what I mean? I would be happy to have people over all the time. How about everyone else? Rob says 70. Wow, I would not have expected that. 70% introverts, 30% extroverts. I can look like an extrovert sometimes for a while, but it wears me out. And that's the interesting thing, because I see Rob at events and I see Rob at playtest events, at conventions. So I think of Rob as a more extroverted person, maybe, than they really are. And the converse thing that I want to also say, sorry, Adam, I just want to finish. People possibly think of me as a happier person than I actually am. I know this sounds like a weird thing to say, but when I'm with other people, I'm totally hyped up. I was tired on Sunday morning on the 12th or whatever it was of March. And then I went to Aircon. I was like a bit tired, but then I went in there and then, there's people. Yay. And then by the time I got to my stand, I was just feeling so high from all the people. I was just, super happy. Adam, anything you want to say about where you fall on the continuum?
I'm about 96% introvert on the Briggs-Myers test. I did it recently and it's drifted down to 90, but that's because I forced myself so hard to run social events. I think I'm drifting. But I just wanted to say thank you for doing your streams. Having an active community, knowing there's a bit of continuity, knowing there's people out there does mean a lot, even if I don't watch all of them, but knowing that there is people giving back is important. So thank you.
Oh, wow. You're very welcome. Alex says somewhere in the middle. Jeff Ross says, introvert, too comfortable with my own company, needs a push to interact with others. That's interesting. And Timmy's just steeping tea, and that is also a valid answer. So, over to you. What are you up to? You can share, but only if you want to. Is there anything you want to share, something you're looking forward to, something you need to do, something fun and frivolous, something super serious? I am doing something somewhere in the middle. I am going to finish rewriting this sheet of paper so that I can print it out again and playtest it with people from the design camp tonight. Then I'm going to go to the design camp. Hopefully I'll be able to get there before the afternoon, carry on working with people, doing stuff with them. It's lovely kind of just getting to do all this physical stuff with people, and maybe draw the cards if I need to during the day. Evening playtest. that is what I'm up to. What are you up to, Adam, after this show today?
Planning the May event, and hopefully some people will join us. It is online as well. Join the community. We're cool. We're nice, and we try and support introverts and extroverts.
Rob says meeting coming up. Lots of love. Alex says really must finish the puzzle set today. Runa, it's totally fine if you come in and out. You do not need to apologize. Runa says I might draw myself a bubbly buff. That sounds delightful. Have a wonderful time. And of course, let me get some links up. So to do a quick recap and wrap up before we finish up, it's just been a nice, gentle chat about what Adam's all about. We chatted about giant games. We chatted about bringing people together with Terra Meeple City. We talked about a potential diving down into a deep sea adventure. We talked about supporting people who are around you and also being nice to people who've sponsored stuff, which I'm delighted by. We talked about different vantage points. We talked about going out and doing nature photography. And we talked a little bit about introversion and just enjoying life. And hey, if you want to do sports, that's not Adam's thing, but enjoy it. Everyone's got to have something to enjoy. And we talked a little bit, tiny bit about online stuff, but there's so much more we could talk about. So if there's anything more that you would like to share, oh, whoops, that was the wrong banner. I meant to have the recap and wrap up thing there. So Adam, where would you like to be found?
Facebook is probably the best place. Discord is probably even better, but you can get to the link to that. And we have websites full of lovely guides, including a mental health guide, mental health first aid guide. If nothing else comes to this session, please go and read the mental health guide. It may really save someone's life. Sorry to end on a kind of a dark note, but that's what communities are about, looking after each other.
No, I love that. And as Alex says, lovely to meet you, and thank you for pushing yourself out there. I understand that even with just a voice, this can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people. There might be a little bit of anxiety, but then the thing to remember is it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's delightful that I see on the screen there's about 9 people watching, and it's delightful to have you as a crowd. Obviously, I am stuffed by Bez everywhere, and if you want to find out my future streams, for the next few days, I am only going to be streaming about Now Play This. I'm not having any guests. Alan Paul is not coming tomorrow because it's just not ideal for either of us, and I just really want to talk more about Now Play This. So if you want to hear about how my days are going, it will possibly be some super short shows. Saturday, Sunday, I might be able to take you on a little virtual tour of the place. I don't have a stand to keep to, so I'm meant to be there facilitating events, but I should be able to at least wander around for 10, 15, 20 minutes to give you a little virtual tour. And then, where's my diary? Next week, on Monday, I'm getting to know Dave Neal, who made a lot of games. And then on next Tuesday, meeting Ben Parkinson as well as some kids from Uganda. And that should be a delightful chat, learning how people are using games to bring together communities in Uganda. Alex says, whenever I feel nervous, I remember how often people are just thinking about themselves. Yeah. And good luck with you all. Thank you, everyone. Share, spread the word. Anything you want to say at this point, Adam?
No, thank you. Just keep being kind to yourself.
That's a nice note. So that is the end of the show. And let me actually... we've got Nerds of the West. We've got Jenham. I love Jenham. Let's go and check out Jenham Music, who is a delightful musician. So if I will probably be listening to some of the tunes while I'm finishing off the thing. So if you want to check that out as well, then please copy paste the message and join the raid. And there is only one thing left to say. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye-bye, Panic. Bye-bye, Alex. Bye-bye, Jeff Ross. Bye-bye, Iruna. Bye-bye, Timmy. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye, Adam.
Bye, everyone.